Today's story unfolds inside the political heart of Europe, where alliances shift fast, power speaks loudly, and every headline can reshape the future of an entire continent. You're watching EU Politics, and in today's deep dive, we're going inside one of the most dramatic political confrontations of 2025, the rising tension between Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. If you care about Europe, geopolitics, or the future of the EU, make sure you subscribe to EU Politics right now, because what we're about to explore is changing everything in real time. Across Europe, a storm has been brewing for months. At the center of this storm are two leaders who couldn't be more different: Orbán, one of the EU's most controversial and defiant heads of government, and Zelenskyy, the wartime president fighting to secure Ukraine's future inside the European family. Their disagreement isn't just personal or political, it's a clash of ideologies, national interests, and visions for what Europe should become. According to recent reports, Zelenskyy has publicly called on Orbán to stop blocking Ukraine's bid for EU membership, urging him to end what he described as needless obstruction at a historic moment for Europe. To understand why this matters so much, we need to step into the mindset of both leaders and also into the halls of Brussels, where the EU's institutions are struggling to maintain unity while the biggest war since World War II rages on Europe's doorstep. Let's begin with Orbán. For years, he has cast himself as the EU's internal challenger, a defender of national sovereignty, a skeptic of EU-wide policies, and someone willing to stand alone even when all other member states disagree. And when it comes to Ukraine's EU accession bid, Orbán has made it clear that he is not ready to support what he considers a rushed and risky expansion. He argues that bringing a country at war into the EU could drag the Union into deeper geopolitical conflict, undermine its security, and threaten the interests of Hungary. His government has repeatedly pointed to concerns about the treatment of ethnic Hungarians living inside Ukraine, insisting their rights are not sufficiently protected, a long-standing dispute that Budapest says Ukraine must address before any EU negotiations advance. This alone would be enough to create tension. But the situation escalated further when Orbán took steps that many European leaders interpreted as deliberate obstruction. He skipped debates focused on Ukraine during our EU summits, refused to engage in key discussions, and signaled that he was prepared to use Hungary's veto power to halt the entire accession process, if necessary. Reports confirm that Orbán even snubbed Zelenskyy at a high-level EU meeting, avoiding direct dialogue on the issue. For the EU, where decisions on enlargement must be unanimous, this isn't just a disagreement, it's a full political blockade. On the other side, there is Zelenskyy, a leader standing not in the comfort of political maneuvering but in the ruins of cities bombed by Russia. For him, EU membership isn't a symbolic victory, it's a lifeline. He has argued repeatedly that Ukraine has already implemented essential reforms, aligned itself with EU standards, and demonstrated its commitment to European values, even while under full-scale invasion. In public statements, Zelenskyy has criticized Orbán's position directly, suggesting that blocking Ukraine's EU pathway ultimately benefits Vladimir Putin more than it serves Hungary's security. He sees Orbán's veto not as a measured policy stance, but as a political tool that undermines European unity at the worst possible time. Zelenskyy's frustration has been echoed by other European figures, including Antonio Costa, who warned that escalating political attacks on EU processes could destabilize the bloc. Media reports show that European leaders are increasingly concerned that the tensions between Kyiv and Budapest risk tearing open deeper cracks within the EU, especially when the Union is expected to present a united front against Russian aggression. This raises an essential question. Why is Orbán refusing to back down, even in the face of criticism from almost every corner of the EU? Some analysts point to domestic politics. Orbán's base is deeply nationalistic and wary of foreign influence. Challenging Brussels boosts his image as a protector of Hungarian sovereignty. Others note his long-standing political alignment with Moscow. Though he denies being pro-Russia, his government has maintained warmer relations with Putin compared to other EU states. Zelenskyy has even suggested that Orbán's veto on Ukraine's EU bid effectively provides specific support to Putin, framing the situation as a geopolitical betrayal rather than a legal disagreement. Inside Brussels, frustration is building. EU officials have acknowledged Ukraine's tangible progress on anti-corruption efforts and rule of law reforms, confirming that the country has met many of the standards required to open formal membership talks. But due to the EU's consensus rules, a single member state can halt the process entirely. This has prompted renewed debate about whether the EU's enlargement framework needs to be reformed, because if one member can repeatedly block major decisions, the entire union becomes vulnerable to internal paralysis. This is the crossroads Europe stands at right now. Should the EU allow one leader's concerns, whether strategic, political, or personal, to hold veto power over a historic enlargement decision? Or should it risk changing the rules, potentially weakening the sovereignty of individual member states in the process? Neither path is easy, and both carry consequences far beyond the immediate conflict between Orbán and Zelenskyy. As this political battle intensifies, the real-world stakes grow higher. For Ukraine, EU membership represents stability, financial support, long-term security guarantees, and a clear break from Russia's influence. For Hungary, standing firm symbolizes national independence and resistance to pressure from larger EU states. And for the EU itself, this confrontation is a stress test for its unity, its principles, and its ability to evolve in a changing world. Imagine for a moment the pressure on Zelenskyy, leading a nation under attack, managing military strategy, overseeing reforms demanded by Brussels, and still having to negotiate with a leader who refuses to meet him face-to-face at key summits. Imagine the pressure on the EU Commission, trying to keep a 27-nation alliance moving in the same direction when even one refusal can derail the entire process. And imagine the pressure within Hungary, where Orbán remains popular but increasingly isolated on the European stage. The long-term implications are enormous. If Hungary continues to block Ukraine, other countries could lose faith in the EU's unity. If the EU circumvents Hungary, it could destroy the tradition of unanimous decision-making. If Ukraine is forced to wait indefinitely, public confidence in the European project could collapse inside a nation fighting and dying for the values the EU claims to stand for. Now consider how this conflict shapes Europe's future. Will the EU remain a union where each member has equal power at the risk of internal deadlock? Or will it transform into a more centralized political force where unity overrides individual national concerns? Will Ukraine join quickly, symbolizing a new era of European integration? Or will it remain outside, trapped by a conflict between two leaders with fundamentally different visions? As these questions rise, so does public attention. Social media has erupted with debates about Orbán's motives, Zelenskyy's demands, and the EU's internal weaknesses. Citizens from across Europe are increasingly vocal. Some say Orbán is defending Hungary from being dragged into a war. Others say he is sabotaging the continent at one of the most critical times in modern history. What's clear is this: the Orbán-Zelenskyy battle is far more than a political argument. It's a turning point. Before we continue, this is a perfect moment to remind you, subscribe to EU Politics so you don't miss any updates, as this story keeps evolving day by day. So what happens next? Multiple scenarios are possible. In one scenario, Orbán eventually backs down under pressure from the EU, especially if financial or political incentives come into play. Brussels has tools to nudge reluctant member states: funds, negotiations, compromises, and political deals. Another scenario is that Ukraine agrees to a gradual, phased approach to membership, gaining access to certain EU programs without becoming a full member immediately. This would satisfy some of Orbán's concerns while keeping Ukraine on track for full integration. A third scenario, one feared by many, is that the stalemate continues for years,